Welcome. Before we go any further, I need you to stop for just a moment. Not to think, not to analyze, just to feel. Because what I am about to ask you is not the kind of question you answer with your mind. It is the kind of question that moves through your chest before your brain even catches up. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror, really stood there, and looked into the eyes staring back at you and felt something strange? Not confusion, not vanity, something quieter than that, something almost like grief. Because yes, that is your face. Those are your eyes. That is the body you have carried through every single day of your life. But somewhere behind that reflection, behind that familiar arrangement of features you have looked at 10,000 times, there is a presence you cannot quite name. A flicker of something that feels both deeply intimate and completely foreign at the same time. Like you are watching a stranger live your life. Like somewhere along the way, through the obligations and the expectations, through the years of performing and producing and pleasing, the person you were truly born to be got buried. Not destroyed, not erased, not gone, just buried, beneath the layers, beneath the roles, beneath the carefully constructed version of you that the world decided it needed. And here is what makes this even more unsettling. Most people live their entire lives without ever realizing it happened. They reach a certain age, successful by every external measurement, respected, comfortable, accomplished, and they feel an emptiness so vast and so silent that they have no language for it. Because you cannot grieve something you never acknowledged losing, and you cannot reclaim something you have convinced yourself you never had. You know that feeling. You know it even if you have never said it out loud. When you have been everything for everyone, the dependable one, the responsible one, the one who never breaks, the one who always shows up. And then at the very end of the day, when all the roles are finally set aside and the house is quiet, and the notifications stop coming, something surfaces. Not a thought exactly, not even a clean emotion. More like a whisper from somewhere underneath all of it. A whisper that asks a single question. But where am I in all of this? That whisper is not weakness. That whisper is not a crisis. That whisper is the most intelligent, most honest, most alive part of you. And today, on this channel, Carl Jung Philosophy, we are going to follow it, all the way down. Because that whisper is not asking you to fall apart. It is asking you to come together. It is leading you somewhere most people are too afraid to go. It is leading you back to yourself. I am going to share something with you today that has the power to fundamentally alter the way you understand your own existence. The life you have been living up until this moment, the life built from obligations and performances and carefully maintained appearances, may not have been your real life. It may have been the rehearsal, the rough draft, the preview of something that has not yet begun. The actual story, the one with all the color and all the depth and all the meaning you have been quietly starving for, does not start until you find out who you genuinely are beneath everything you were taught to become. Walking alongside us on this journey is one of the most profound explorers of human consciousness who ever lived. Carl Jung, the man who dedicated his entire existence to mapping the invisible interior landscape that every single human being carries within them. He will show us how to see behind the masks we wear without even knowing we are wearing them. He will show us how to descend into the chambers of ourselves we have sealed shut in fear, and discover that what we locked away there was never garbage. It was always gold. And he will guide us towards something so vast, so complete, so genuinely alive that the only word that comes close is this: whole. If you are ready, if some part of you has been waiting for this conversation without knowing what it was waiting for, then let us begin. The only journey that has ever truly mattered. The journey back to you. Everything begins with a mask. Not a metaphor, not a poetic device, a real, functional, necessary psychological structure that every human being develops, usually before the age of 7, in order to survive the particular world they were born into. Carl Jung gave this mask a name that carries centuries of meaning. He called it the persona. The word comes from the ancient term for the theatrical masks worn by actors in classical Greek drama, where the mask was not a deception but a declaration. This is the role I am playing. This is the character you are watching. The persona is the face we present to the external world. It is the social identity we assemble, consciously and unconsciously, through years of feedback and reward and correction, in order to be accepted, to be valued, to be safe. Think about the masks you carry right now. Not one mask, multiple. The polished professional mask you put on the moment you step through the office door. The responsible, composed mask you wear when you return to your family because they need you to be steady. The cheerful, social mask you hold carefully in place at gatherings, even on the days when everything inside you is anything but cheerful. The strong one mask, the one who has it together mask, the one who does not need anything mask. These personas are not lies. I want to be precise about this. They are not evil. They are not symptoms of inauthenticity. They are, in many ways, a form of sophisticated social intelligence. Just as an astronaut requires a pressurized suit to function in the vacuum of space, we require our personas to navigate the complex, demanding, unpredictable environments of modern social life. Our masks protect us. They allow us to build professional relationships, maintain family structures, participate in communities that require certain standards of behavior. They are necessary. The problem is not wearing the mask. The problem begins the moment you forget you are wearing one. The problem deepens the moment you stop being able to feel the difference between the mask and your actual face. And once that collapse happens, once the persona becomes the totality of your identity rather than one useful tool within a larger self, something quietly devastating occurs. You stop living your life and start performing it. You stop speaking from your interior and start calculating what response will be best received. The stage never goes dark. The audience never leaves. And the real you, unscripted, unpolished, unrehearsed, never receives a single genuine moment of light. Let me show you what this looks like lived out across an actual human life. His name is Adam. He is approaching 40. From the outside, his life answers every question society says you should want answered. Senior executive at a well-regarded organization. A home he owns, a car that communicates success, a family that mentions him with obvious pride. His colleagues describe him as the person the room becomes calmer for. His friends call him solid, the one you call when everything is unraveling, because Adam never unravels. Adam's persona is the successful, responsible man. He has worn this mask with such extraordinary precision and for so long that it has become invisible to others and, increasingly, to himself. In meetings, he is the voice that steadies the room. On the most demanding assignments, he is the one who somehow delivers. When his family encounters difficulty, Adam is there first, financially, emotionally, logistically, before anyone has to ask. When friends are in crisis, Adam is the steady voice, the practical answer, the unshaking presence. Adam is, in every visible respect, a fortress. But there is another Adam, one that exists only in the 10 minutes after he parks his car at the end of each day. Every evening, Adam drives home. He pulls into the garage beneath his building. He cuts the engine, and then he sits there, alone in the darkness and the silence, sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes considerably longer. Those 10 minutes are the only space in Adam's entire day when the masks come off, when the executive dissolves, when the dependable son, the reliable friend, the unbreakable leader, all quietly step away from the stage. And what remains in the silence they leave behind is not peace. It is not relief. It is a weight so familiar he has stopped trying to name it, and an emptiness so persistent he has learned to move through his days carrying it the way people carry old injuries, always present, never discussed, never genuinely healed. Adam is not living his own life. Adam is living the life that was written for him by his father's unspoken expectations, by an industry that rewarded his performance so consistently he never questioned whether the performance was the point, by a social world that gave him approval every time he suppressed what he actually needed and showed up for what others needed instead. He is not the author of his story. He is a character in a narrative someone else began. And here is the first truth this entire journey rests upon. Discovering yourself begins with recognizing what is false. It begins with feeling the mask on your own face, with noticing, perhaps for the first time, the weight of it, with beginning to ask, quietly, honestly, without judgment, what you have sacrificed in order to keep it so perfectly in place. If you recognize Adam's parking garage, if you know that 10-minute silence between the public self and the private one, write 11. I am not the mask I was taught to wear in the comments right now. Because that recognition is not a confession of failure. That recognition is the beginning of everything real. So what becomes of the parts of us that do not fit the mask? The parts that are too raw, too wild, too sad, too ambitious, too strange, too tender for the persona we have so carefully constructed. They do not vanish. The psyche does not discard what it cannot display. They go somewhere. Carl Jung called that somewhere the shadow. The shadow is the interior room where everything rejected gets stored. Every quality we deemed unacceptable, every impulse we were taught to be ashamed of, every dimension of ourselves that did not match the identity we needed in order to be loved. Our anger is there, our envy, our grief, our neediness, our hunger for things we learned not to admit to wanting. The parts of us that are petty and tired and resentful and afraid. But this is the discovery that rearranges everything. The shadow does not only hold what we consider dark, it also holds what we considered too luminous to be safe. The artist we shut down because art was not practical. The dreamer we silenced because dreaming was not responsible. The emotionally sensitive self we suppressed because sensitivity was not strong. The creative impulse we extinguished because creativity was not efficient. The part of us that wanted to travel, to question, to disappear into something beautiful and purposeless, locked away because it did not serve the persona's requirements. The shadow is the location of both the monsters and the treasure, and we are so conditioned to fear the monsters that we refuse to enter the room at all. We bolt the door. We convince ourselves the room does not exist. We build the most elaborate mental architectures around the fact of its existence, so we never have to acknowledge what we know is inside. But the shadow does not cooperate with that arrangement. It finds exits. It surfaces in dreams, in images that arrive at 3 a.m. with a clarity that waking life never quite matches. It erupts in moments of disproportionate anger when we snap at someone we love over something objectively small, and then we feel ashamed of ourselves without understanding where the anger came from. It leaks through projection. The traits we react to most violently in other people are almost always the traits we have most aggressively denied in ourselves. And here is the painful irony that Jung returned to again and again. The more energy we invest in suppressing the shadow, the stronger it becomes. The tighter the lock, the harder the push from the other side. What we refuse to own internally will be expressed externally in ways and at moments we did not choose and cannot always control. Jung was unambiguous about the stakes. You cannot reach wholeness while living only in the portions of yourself you consider acceptable. You cannot become complete while excluding entire territories of your own interior. Real life, the full, textured, genuinely inhabited version of it, begins only when you are willing to enter the shadow. Not to become it, not to unleash it without discrimination, but to face it, to know it, to reclaim from its depths the parts of yourself that were always yours. Subscribe to Carl Jung Philosophy and share this with one person in your life who needs to hear it. Because what comes next might be the thing they have been searching for without knowing what to search for. But let us go deeper still. Because the persona and the shadow, as transformative as they are only the beginning of what Jung discovered about the human interior. Beneath your personal history, beneath the specific wounds of your childhood and the particular conditioning of your culture, there is something far older, something that does not belong to you as an individual at all. Jung called it the collective unconscious. He proposed, with what turned out to be extraordinary prescience, that beneath each person's individual unconscious, there exists a deeper layer of psychological reality shared across the whole of humanity. Not transmitted through memory or culture, but encoded into the fundamental structure of the psyche itself. Present in every human being who has ever existed, regardless of era, geography, language, or background. This collective unconscious is organized around what Jung called archetypes. The archetypes are the original characters of the human drama, the deep patterns of experience and narrative that recur across every culture's mythology, every civilization's stories, every era's art and religion and dream. They are the soul's DNA, the pre-existing templates through which we experience the most fundamental dimensions of being human. Every one of us carries a hero archetype, the part that orients toward challenge, that wants to climb the mountain, face the darkness, sacrifice comfort for something that matters. In Adam, this is the engine behind every professional accomplishment, every delivered project, every time he showed up when it would have been easier not to. But when the hero becomes the only voice you listen to, when it dominates the entire inner landscape, it transforms a person into something mechanical, always advancing, never resting, treating all of existence as terrain to be conquered rather than life to be inhabited. Every one of us carries a wise elder, the part that is drawn toward depth over speed, that knows the difference between information and wisdom, that has access, somehow, to an orientation that transcends what the rational mind can calculate. Every one of us carries an innocent child, the part that has not yet learned to be strategic, that approaches experience with openness rather than agenda, that still knows in some cellular, pre-rational way what it felt like before the performance began. And more, the lover, the creator, the wanderer, the rebel, the caregiver, the sage. We are not single-note instruments. We are entire orchestras. We contain multitudes, complete, complex, contradictory ensembles of inner life. And the tragedy of the unexamined existence is that we spend it performing a monologue when we were written in our full depth for a symphony. The process of genuine self-discovery, the real labor of becoming who you actually are rather than who you were shaped to be, is the ongoing practice of learning to hear every section of that orchestra, of recognizing which voices have been amplified and which have been silenced, of creating space for every archetype to contribute its particular quality to the composition of your life. When Adam gives exclusive authority to the hero and the responsible man, he becomes rigid, brittle, spiritually one-dimensional in a life that is begging for dimension. He functions, but he does not flourish. He produces, but he does not truly live. But when he begins to let the Creator speak, even tentatively, even imperfectly, something in him loosens. When he lets the child encounter something beautiful without immediately asking whether it is useful, something softens. When the wise elder is allowed into decisions that previously belonged entirely to ambition, something deepens and becomes less frantic. That is when the full music starts. That is when the complete, resonant, genuinely inhabited version of a human life becomes available. And now we reach the summit of everything this journey has been building toward. You have recognized the mask. You have faced the shadow. You have begun to hear the inner orchestra. But who is the one experiencing all of this? Who is the awareness that observes the mask being worn, that witnesses the shadow's contents, that hears the archetypes from somewhere that is not quite any of them? Carl Jung considered this the most important question in all of human psychology, and his answer reframes everything. The self you typically take yourself to be, the one that says, I am an engineer, I am a mother, I am successful, I am anxious, I am 38 years old, and my name is Adam. Jung called that the ego. The ego is the center of conscious awareness. It is the organizing intelligence of your personal history, your memory, your rational functioning, your sense of continuity across time. The ego is absolutely essential. It is the structure that allows a human being to navigate external reality with any degree of coherence. But the ego is not the totality of what you are. It is an island, and the island believes, with complete sincerity, that it is the world. But you are not the island. You were never only the island. You are the ocean. Jung called the ocean the self, capitalized to distinguish it from the small self of the ego. The self is not a philosophical concept. It is not a spiritual aspiration. It is the actual, lived totality of your psychological being, conscious and unconscious, shadow and archetypes, the known and the still unknown, every dimension of who you are and who you have yet to discover. The self is the center, not just of awareness, but of the entire psyche. It is, in Jung's understanding, the closest thing to what the world's great traditions have called the soul. The ego is the island you have spent your life constructing. The self is the boundless ocean in which that island rests. The first arc of most human lives is devoted entirely to building the island, constructing an identity, establishing a direction, achieving things that confirm the island's solidity and worth. This is not a mistake. This construction is necessary and legitimate. The island must exist before it can be placed in proper relationship with the ocean. But somewhere, usually at the midpoint of life, often triggered by something the island's architecture cannot withstand, a profound loss, a failure that the persona cannot metabolize, a quiet morning when every achievement is present and accounted for, and still something fundamental is missing. The ocean begins to call. Jung understood this moment with remarkable clarity. He saw the midlife crisis not as a malfunction, but as a summons. The self, patient and vast and inexhaustible, calling the ego home, asking it to release the belief that the island is all there is, inviting it to discover that the ocean it rests within was always there, always sustaining it, and that surrendering to it is not drowning. It is finally learning to breathe. The invitation requires only one thing. It asks you to stop mistaking the island for the ocean. It asks you to reposition the ego, not destroy it, not bypass it, but move it from the captain's chair to the navigator's seat, and let the self lead from a place of depth rather than fear. When that reorientation happens, gradually, through sustained honesty and genuine inner work, the texture of everything changes. You no longer define yourself exclusively by the boundaries of a professional role, because you know that you are that role and also 100 other things it never had room for. When criticism lands, it no longer collapses you, because the criticism hits the island and the ocean is untouched. When failure arrives, and it will arrive, it no longer defines you, because your value was never located in the architecture of the island to begin with. The exhausting need to control every outcome, to manage every perception, to ensure every response is the right one, that grip begins to loosen, because you start to know in your bones that the ocean cannot be controlled. It can only be trusted. And that trust, it turns out, is the most solid ground there is. That is when real life begins. Not the life you perform, not the life written by other people's needs, not the life assembled from the outside in. The life that is yours, fully, finally, without apology. If something in this conversation reached a part of you that has been quietly waiting, if the ocean in you recognized itself just now, write 777, I am the ocean, not the island, in the comments. Not as a ritual, as a declaration, because saying it is the first act of choosing it. We have come a long way together in this conversation. From the mask, the persona built to survive a world that required performance before it offered belonging, to the shadow, the room, where everything rejected was stored, and where the greatest treasures were hidden alongside the things we feared most. To the archetypes, the ancient collective characters that populate our interior and constitute the full range of who we are capable of being. And finally, to this, the distinction between the island and the ocean, between the ego that was constructed and the self that was always already there. But I want to leave you with something that Carl Jung returned to in different forms across his entire life's work. Something that cuts beneath all the concepts and all the frameworks. The most dangerous thing a human being can do, he believed, is to live unconsciously. To move through an entire existence responding to the surface of things, maintaining the persona, avoiding the shadow, never once asking the question that sits at the center of a genuinely examined life. Who am I, actually, when no one is watching and nothing is required of me? And the most courageous thing a human being can do, more demanding than any external achievement, more transformative than any professional milestone, is to turn honestly inward, to face what is there, to stop fleeing from the parts of yourself you have decided are unlovable, to stop shrinking yourself into shapes that were always too small for the full scale of what you are. You are not the mask. You were never only the mask. You are not the island alone. You have always been surrounded by something infinite. The life that is waiting for you, the one that feels like oxygen after years of shallow breathing, like color after years of gray, is not in another city. It is not in a different version of your resume or a different configuration of your relationships. It is here. It is in the honest, compassionate, unhurried confrontation with who you actually are. It is in the decision to stop performing for an audience that was never going to give you the thing you actually needed. This is the invitation Carl Jung extended, not to a chosen few, not to the philosophically sophisticated, but to every human being willing to receive it. Not to become someone entirely new, to remember who you always were before the world began telling you who to be. That remembering, that return, begins exactly here, exactly now. There is one more thing I want to say before we part, because I know that some of you listening to this right now are thinking, "This is beautiful, but it is also terrifying." And you are right, it is terrifying. The journey inward is not comfortable. It is not tidy. It is not something you complete on a weekend and check off a list. Facing the persona means confronting the very real possibility that the life you have built, with all its genuine accomplishments and genuine connections, was built at least partially from fear of what people would think if you were actually yourself. That is not easy to sit with. Facing the shadow means encountering the parts of yourself you spent years, maybe decades, deciding were unacceptable. The anger you swallowed, the envy you were ashamed of, the grief you never processed because there was always something more pressing. That is not comfortable territory. Facing the archetypes means acknowledging the full scope of who you could be, which immediately confronts you with the distance between that scope and the narrow lane you have been traveling. That gap can feel like an accusation. And facing the self, surrendering the ego's grip on the belief that it is the totality of your identity, can feel, initially, like a kind of death, like letting go of the only ground you have ever known. But here is what I want you to hold on to. What Jung understood, and what every person who has genuinely traveled this road discovers: the terror is always larger in anticipation than in reality. The monsters in the shadow are always less devastating when faced than when fled. The ocean, when you finally stop fighting it and allow yourself to rest in it, turns out to be the safest place you have ever been. And the self, that vast, patient, endlessly generous center of your entire being, has been waiting for you with extraordinary kindness. It has never been angry at the ego for taking so long. It has never judged you for the decades you spent wearing the mask. It has simply been there, beneath everything, holding the space for your return. This is not a journey toward something foreign. It is a journey home. Jung himself described it this way, and these words have stayed with me as perhaps the most honest thing ever said about the psychology of becoming. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who you were told to be, not who it was safe to be, not who earned the most approval or caused the least disruption. Who you truly, irreducibly, authentically are. That privilege belongs to you. It has always belonged to you, and it does not expire. No matter how long you have been wearing the mask, no matter how sealed the shadow's door has been, no matter how convinced the ego has become that the island is the whole story, the ocean is still there. It has always been there, and it is waiting. That remembering, that return, begins exactly here, exactly now. We will meet again in the next conversation. Until then, look at yourself with honesty. Look at yourself with patience. Look at yourself with the kind of deep, steady compassion you would extend to someone you genuinely love. Because that is precisely what you are. Goodbye.